Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another Factoring Perfect Squares Completely. But now we're going to be factoring with the greatest common factor. All right, and I'll put a card up at the top of the screen that's going to talk about how to find the greatest common factor. We'll do a lesson on that. Greatest common factor is definitely something you should have seen and come across already, right? If you're looking at two numbers, guys, the greatest common factor, for example, if you have 2 and 8, the greatest common factor is the largest number that will go into both 2 and 8. All right, so we'll talk about that. But today, we're going to add that to our steps. So the first step when we factor twice, because remember, factoring completely means we always factor twice. Instead of setting up two sets of parentheses, today we're going to find the GCF and we're going to set up one set of parentheses. Then we're going to divide both terms by the greatest common factor. You guys all know how to divide, so this shouldn't be crazy. And then, guys, steps 3 to 6, they're exactly the same steps we've been doing for factoring perfect squares, or the difference of two perfect squares. Setting up two sets of parentheses, minus always goes to the right, first sign's always a plus, and then, of course, you just find the square root. Now, if anyone needs the buttons for the calculator, they're right here to find the GCF. You hit the math button, go to the right, hit number 9, put in your numbers, and you hit enter, and you'll be able to find any greatest common factor on the planet, and I will, of course, show you and demonstrate how to do that. If you have not done so already, guys, please download or purchase or get this calculator, the TI-84 Plus CE or just TI-84 Plus. This is the calculator of choice that we are using that is going to help us smash this Regents exam. Okay, so let's get super deep into it and see what we got here, guys. It's talking about factoring completely. That tells us right off the bat, you and I, we all know now after today's lesson anyway, factor completely, guys, always tells you to factor twice. The only difference, guys, is even though it looks like a perfect square binomial, it's not, because 2 is not a perfect square, neither is 8. So what does the first step say? You need to find a greatest common factor and then open one set of parentheses. Now, just to save time, guys, when you have the number 2 and 8, the GCF here is 2. So what you do is, guys, you pull out 2 and you open one parenthesis. That's all. And now the second step says to divide both terms by the GCF. Here are your terms. So you're going to divide them both by 2. So what we do to the first term, guys, we always do to the second. Always. 2 divided by 2 cancels. So your x squared comes down, minus sign comes down, and then 8 divided by 2, you get 4. And you close your parenthesis. Guys, whenever you open a parenthesis, we always close it. That's the first two steps. Check, check. Now, we remember when you're factoring completely, guys, we always factor twice. So notice what you have here, x squared minus 4. Well, that's the perfect square, guys. We've been factoring the last few days now. So this is where you open your two sets of parentheses, just like my directions above tell you. Minus sign to the right like always for perfect squares. First sign's a plus like always for perfect squares. Get the square roots. Square root of x squared is x. And guys, you know the square root of 4 is 2. The only difference here, there's no binomial in front today like we had. I mean, there's no binomial in front like today that we had. You have a 2, guys, the greatest common factor. Just bring him down in the front. So it's going to be 2 times x plus 2 times x minus 2. And guys, that is how you factor completely with the greatest common factor. Let's look at the next one. Now, let's say you're looking at this problem. Even though these are all perfect squares, you have to look for a greatest common factor first. So let's go to the calculator. It says hit the math button. Guys, here's your math button right here. You hit math. You hit the right arrow. Notice number 9 says GCD, greatest common denominator. That's the same thing as the greatest common factor. Okay, so you hit enter. Oh my God, I just did that wrong. Whoops. Math, right, 9. Notice how GCD comes up with a parenthesis? Put in the two numbers. You have 4 and 36. Remember when I said you never use commas? This is the one time in math you're going to use a comma when you're looking for a GCF, guys. You put 4, 36, you hit enter. The greatest common factor is 4. The GCF is 4. So here's what you do. We're going to put 4, and we're going to open one parenthesis. That's the first step. Second step says divide both terms by the greatest common factor. So we're going to divide this set by 4. And we're going to divide this set by 4. 4 divided by 4 cancels, guys. That's what you're looking for. The m squared comes down. Minus sign comes down, and 36 divided by 4 gives you 9. Now, guys, immediately, this should be lit up like a Christmas tree for you. You know this is a perfect square binomial. So now you just go back to the old rules that we've been learning and factoring with. Factor all perfect squares, 2 sets of parentheses. Minus sign goes to the right. First sign's a plus. Square root of m squared is m. And the square root of 9, guys, is 3. And all you have to do is bring the greatest common factor of 4 down in front. And that's your answer. That's how you factor perfect squares completely with the greatest common factor. 4 times m plus 3 times m minus 3. Let's look at another one. 3n27. Guys, I'm just going to give you a little hint here for this particular one. The greatest common factor is 3. Open up one parenthesis. Now what step 2 say? Bring 3 up and divide. Here and here. Remember, what we do to one term, we always do to the other. 3 divided by 3 cancels, guys. X squared comes down. Minus sign comes down. 27 divided by 3 gives you 9. Close your parenthesis. Normally you would be finished, but because it says factor completely, guys, you have to factor twice. So we need to open 2 sets of parentheses. This is a perfect square binomial. Minus sign to the right. First sign's a plus. The square root of x squared, guys, is x. And the square root of 9, as we know, is 3. And your GCF of 3 comes down. And there you go. So you have 3 times x plus 3 times x minus 3. And that's how you factor completely with the greatest common factor. Now notice this one. Some of you might think, hey, you know what? I can try to use 18 and go into 50, but that's not going to work. 18 is not the greatest common factor. So let's go to our calculator. We hit the math button. You hit the right arrow. You choose number 9. Notice it says GCD. It's ready for the greatest common factor. So you put in 18, comma, 50, hit enter. The greatest common factor here is 2. So I'm going to put a 2 in front. All right, and we open, whenever you're using the greatest common factor, guys, you only use one set of parentheses first. Now bring your 2 up and divide here and here. Remember, what we do to one term, we always do to the other. 18 divided by 2, guys, that gives you 9, and your x squared comes down. Minus 50 divided by 2, guys, that gives you 25. This should not make you nervous, guys, because you are once again looking at a perfect square binomial. We have been factoring these all week, all right? 2 sets of parentheses. Minus sign always to the right, first sign's a plus. Now, it's not just x squared, guys. Remember, it's 9x squared. We have seen this before. The square root of 9x squared is 3x. And the square root of 25 is 5. And your greatest common factor of 2 comes down in front always. So there you go. 2 times 3x plus 5 times 3x minus 5. And that is factoring completely with the greatest common factor. Let's look at some more and then we're done. Okay, let's look at this one here. 2x squared minus 50. All right. So the GCF, greatest common factor, guys, is 2. So you pull out 2 and you open one parenthesis. Then you bring your 2 up to divide. What we do to one term, we always do to the next. 2 divided by 2 cancels, guys, leaving you with x squared minus 50 divided by 2 gives you 25. Now, guys, x squared minus 25, that's the perfect square. You know how to factor perfect squares. Go to your perfect square rules. We know that's 2 sets of parentheses. We know the minus sign goes to the right. First sign is a plus. Square root of x squared is x. And the square root of 25 is 5. Do not forget to bring the greatest common factor of 2 down. And that's your final answer. All right? Simple. Factoring with the greatest common factor. All right, let's look at another one. Now you're looking at 8 and 18. Maybe you're not sure what the greatest common factor is. No problem. Let's go to the calculator. You hit the math button. Hit the right arrow. hit number 9, and we want to put 8 comma 18, and you hit enter. Greatest common factor here is 2. So remember, when you're factoring with the greatest common factor, guys, you write the greatest common factor, and then you open up one parenthesis. So in this case, once again, it's 2. You open one parenthesis for the GCF. Bring your 2 up and divide. And what we do to one term, we always do to the other. Now, 8 divided by 2 is going to give you 4, and your x squared comes down. So a little different than before. Minus sign comes down, and then 18 divided by 2 gives you 9. 4x squared minus 9 should not make you nervous, guys. That is a perfect square binomial. So now we factor perfect squares like we always do. 2 sets of parentheses. Minus again to the right. First sign's a plus. Square root of 4x squared, you guys know, is 2x. Square root of 9 is 3. And my greatest common factor of 2 just comes down. And that is your final answer. 2 times 2x plus 3 times 2x minus 3. Last one. 4x squared minus 16, just in case and just to review the numbers, in case you don't know, you hit the math button, you go to the right, you hit number 9, you put in 4 comma 16, and you hit enter. The greatest common factor here is 4. So, pull out 4. Open one parenthesis. Bring up your 4 and divide. Boom, boom. 4's cancel, guys. You get x squared minus 16 divided by 4 is 4. That should not make anyone nervous. We know x squared minus 4, guys, is a perfect square. You need 2 sets of parentheses. I should have changed up my colors a little bit. Minus to the right. First sign's a plus. Square root of x squared is always x. Square root of 4 is always 2. And then, guys, you bring down your greatest common factor of 4. Comes down. Boom. That, guys, is factoring with a greatest common factor. Now, we're going to do another part to factoring with the greatest common factor completely tomorrow. And that's going to have where instead of just a number like 4 or 2, you're actually going to have an x with it. That's going to change some things up a little bit. We're going to have to think about our rules for dividing monomials. So think about your rules you learned last year for dividing monomials. For example, something like x to the third divided by x. That's going to come in handy tomorrow. So guys, that's it for factoring with the greatest common factor completely. Perfect squares. Please, any questions for me? My email is in the description below. Feel free to email me. Comment below, guys, on what you liked or what you didn't like. Maybe you hated it. Tell me. That would be awesome. Please subscribe, like, and share, guys. And as always, thank you for watching. I appreciate it. But more importantly than math or anything we're doing, guys, please stay safe to you, your family, and your friends. And I will see you guys on the next lesson.